Um, so, welcome everybody, and welcome to this evening workshop with Valeria. Give us a wave, Valeria, so everyone can see you. Wonderful,
Hello.
wonderful. So, my first appointment this morning was a recruitment call, and I was approaching a lady we haven't spoken to before to introduce her to a role. The client that we were working with had actually said to me and picked out this particular lady that they were desperate and really wanted to talk to her because they thought that she was really good and got all the qualifications for the job. And this was a word of a lie. I spoke to the lady, I picked up the phone, I talked her through the job, and I said to her, it would be managing a team of 20 people. And she said, well, that's not for me. I'm looking to step up, but I only manage 15 today. I talked to her about the role, and she said, so it sounds really interesting. It's where I want to get to, but I'm not ready yet. I then talked to her about the salary, and she said, it's far too much. I'm not earning that amount today. Anyway, I recommended that she came on this call because tonight we've got Valeria with us, who is talking about shifting from self-doubt to undeniable confidence. Valeria is joining us from Atlanta in the US. So it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So good early afternoon to you, Valeria, and welcome onto the call.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Velera Wilson, and I'm so excited to be here with you today, Mark, and everyone. Thanks for the invitation.
Brilliant, brilliant. Sorry, I'm just playing around with a little bit of technology here. Right. I've got a first question for you. Let's get started. What exactly was the inspiration behind you writing your book?
Sure. So I wrote the book and it released last fall. You're absolutely worth it. Release self-doubt, embrace confidence, and own your yes. And the journey started a very long time ago. And it's so funny sometimes when I do events, I speak globally and I hear intros and bios and I thought, my God, who is that person? Because I remember, that there was a time when I was so completely full of self-doubt and completely unsure of myself. I really struggled to own my voice. But on the outside, I put on a great game face, but inside I was really, really hiding. And I was completely unaware of my own strength. And I was absolutely terrified to ask for what I wanted. So when you talked about the woman earlier that you went to for your client, I understand that. And the reason why was because for a long time, I spoke to myself and saw myself through the lens of what I'd been through and what I'd experienced and where I came from. And I wasn't quite sure where I fit in when I entered the workforce. I was born to a single teen mother. We slept in the same room for a very long time. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And so nothing about my background said that I should be confident or assertive when I entered the workforce. And so I shrank. I just shrank a lot. And I thought it was me for a very long time. We have our own little conversations in our head and we think it's just us until I started to connect with so many women around the world. I got selected to be part of global leadership programs. I started meeting women who were female founders and entrepreneurs, leaders at companies, recent college graduates when I started to mentor. And it became evident that there was this common swirl and this underlying current, I like to call it, of self-doubt. And the question that kept rising up continuously was, am I enough? And it would sound differently, but they would say things like, women would say things like, well, I don't know. Like this woman said, I don't know that I'm qualified to lead that team yet. Or I don't know, can I really ask for that salary? Or what do you think about this job? Or it was just always this question and this internal swirl, I call it. And so I'll ask anyone on the call, have you ever struggled to really ask for what you want because of self-doubt? You know, and that is why I wrote the book, is because as women, we have some amazing qualities, we have some amazing strengths and abilities, but sometimes we will discount those things and we question whether we should have a seat at the table, whether we should ask for that, whether we should do that thing that we really want to do. And so I wanted to write a book that really gave women the inspiration, the practical steps, and the permission to just go after that thing and say, yes, you are absolutely worth that thing. Go get it. But that was the inspiration. And it started a very long time ago. So I guess I've been writing this book for my whole life.
Your whole life.
Yes, it just manifested on paper finally.
Brilliant, brilliant. Velera, thank you so much for that introduction. I think we agreed right up front that we wanted to make this as interactive as possible. So everybody's on mute. If you want to interject, if you want to ask a question, come off mute and just shout, yeah? Or if you don't want to shout, put your hand up and I will try and spot you. If not, put something in the chat and we'll pick it up. Let's make this a really interactive networking session today.
Oh yes, I love that.
Speak up. Don't forget, it's a safe place. We are recording, but if it gets personal, if we want to bring personal stuff up, we'll stop the recording, because it's more important that we have a great session today than we let people see what we've been talking about who weren't able to get here. So interrupt, get in, and let's have a great session. So let's get moving on. I've got a second question for you. Why is this message of self-confidence, self-worth, self-belief so important today for women?
Sure. Well, the first thing is I asked that question, or I'll say when COVID hit, I was very tempted to put my book on pause. I didn't think that it was the right time. I thought, well, oh my God, I can't do a book tour. I can't really connect with people, or maybe this would just get lost in the noise. And it's so funny because when you have those moments of self-doubt, having people around you that help you realize and shift the way you think is important as well. And it just really, when you start to look at what happened all last year and even what's happening this year, the message of confidence is relevant in any time period. But oh my God, if you think about everything that we're going through right now, and even how COVID has disproportionately impacted women, the C-section, all of those things are just layered upon layered effects for women. We've left the workplace in droves, 140,000 in 1 month, in the month of December. The message of confidence is ever critical right now, because whether you're working from home and now also balancing being a parent at home or a homeschool parent, balancing being a spouse, being a present partner, being a present parent, and also now being a present employee working from home, all those things are coming together. And then, oh my God, if you've lost your job in the process or in the wake of COVID, what that does to us emotionally or mentally in our confidence levels, whether we're the single provider of our households or if we have a partner. So there's just this swirl of a lot of activity that it's so important now for women to really look inward and say, but regardless if I've lost my job, I'm still worth the next job. Regardless of if I'm at home and I'm balancing, trying to be a present worker at my company, I'm still worth the time off. I deserve the time off. I need to take that time for me. It's really, really important now to really look inward for women and really affirm ourselves, because there's so many messages, competing forces that are trying to take that away.
Thank you. I put a question out there to everybody. It's been a challenging year. It's been a challenging year for everybody. As Velera said there, it's particularly women, particularly, if you're trying to juggle homeschooling, you've got other pressures and that kind of stuff. Who feels that they've had their confidence really, really knocked in the last year? And would you like to share your feelings with us? Come on. Perhaps we need Evelyn, thank you, Evelyn. Thank you. Hi, Evelyn. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm well. I think my experience, I'm happy to share with everyone, is obviously working from home. I think in the first few weeks, first couple of months of lockdown was great. It was a novelty. It was wonderful. For me personally, I didn't have to get up at 4:30, get on a train for an hour and a half to then get into the office. So for me, it was wonderful. I think when we kind of got through to the middle of the year, it started to become the new norm, which was fine. And then obviously when we kicked back in at the end of the year, it really was, but this isn't fun anymore. I'm ready to go back to the office. Maybe not 5 days a week, but 2 or 3. So, and I think during that time, for me, what was missing was the interaction with my team. That's really where I felt as a team member, it kept my confidence up, because obviously we were bouncing ideas off each other throughout the day. We were going for a coffee or, etc. And I think when we all started working from home and more remotely, for me, it really did knock my confidence, because everything was being done by Teams or Zoom or whatever, Google. And, I think for me, the first few times in using Microsoft Teams, I didn't want to turn the phone on to video so that people could see me. And I think that's for me, the working from home has been the bit that's probably knocked my self-confidence a bit. And obviously now, as you know, Mark, I'm now looking for a new role. So that as well, on top of having to work from home and not see everybody's was a bit tough. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Evelyn. Thank you. Does anybody else want to bring up their examples? Valerie, my next question to you kind of comes on from that, really. There's internal chatter going on there in terms of, imposter syndrome maybe, or fear of technology, or isolation, or so. What are the causes of this internal chatter, and where does it come from?
Sure. So actually in the book, I start the first chapter about talking about, get to the root cause. What is the root cause of that self-doubt? Because it's easier to talk about confidence, but it's not so easy to talk about why you don't have it. And so it's so important to really unravel that. And so when you ask the question of what causes the internal chatter, I call those sources of self-doubt or the internal chatter our she influencers. And the she stands for what we saw, what we heard, and what we experienced. Those things combined impact how you can push forward successfully, or whether or not you're hindering yourself because of those. And those she influencers could be just as different as we are as individuals. Anything from maybe when growing up as a kid, you had a certain cultural upbringing or beliefs or gender expectations for you. And so maybe it's like women shouldn't be too aggressive, or you shouldn't promote yourself or talk too much about your work, or things that are very real experiences in your career, your relationships, or your personal life. So whether it's going to work and being shut down in meetings and your opinion not being taken seriously in that meeting. So now you start to question yourself and how you show up and whether you speak in those meetings, or even maybe because of your gender or your race, you're treated differently at work. So very real experiences that you could have. And then just our own internal sense of inadequacy. We measure up or compare with other people, and we see this person and we think they're better, they're smarter. And so we don't think that we're good enough or as good as them. And then just overall fear of failure. If we've experienced failure before, or we don't want to feel that sting of rejection or failure, it can keep us from really thriving. But there's so many sources, and I bring them all together under the phrase, what are our she-influencers, to really look at, how can you look at yours and just dissect your own life and say, well, what's the real reason why I'm not confident in this area? Because again, I've talked to so many women, coached women, and they start by saying, well, I'm not confident in meetings, or I'm afraid to negotiate my salary. But then when you start to pull the layers back a bit, the real issue is, well, maybe I grew up and I was told that my opinion didn't matter, or I was, things happen in my life. So there's always a root, and it's important for us to get to that.
Thank you. Dorothy's just put on the chat. Can we do a quick survey? And unfortunately, I haven't got polling on my my Zoom tonight because I'm using Katie's. But just a quick hands up from everybody. Who suffers from internal chatter? Who? So a good show of hands. Brilliant.
I'll put it both on mine.
Dorothy, your husband doesn't, but I can tell you I do. I get worried about things and have self-doubt. So I'm sure we all do. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it was just a male-female distinction.
Yeah.
I think if it was, it would have been long understood.
Yeah.
But I just find it astonishing that he doesn't have this person questioning him in the way that I question myself.
Yeah.
And your opening comments about the lady who I hope does go on to get that job.
Yeah.
How I think that does seem to be very much a male-female thing, in that women would doubt that they could do something, and a man might not even have any of those doubts in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
And Dorothy, have you come to any conclusions about where that kind of comes from? Where is it from childhood? Is it from upbringing? Is it where have you got any thoughts?
I'd love to know. I'd like to switch the bugger off, frankly. I'm afraid I don't have any kind of good reasons. And I mean, when I think, I've got no reason to really doubt myself. I came from fairly humble start and managed to, do quite well in an unexpected way. So why do I still doubt myself? But I do. I'd love to be able to explain it, and I might be able to make it stop. Sorry, I don't have any inspiration there for you.
That's okay, Valeria. I'm going to just change my next question to how do you turn the bugger off?
Well, here's the thing: the bugger doesn't go off. It's that you put the bugger on mute and you step above the noise of that and still choose to take an action. I think that's one of the things. When people ask me what is confidence and how do you get over it, it really is you just take the action anyway and realize that, because sometimes we're thinking that, well, I'll take an action or I'll be confident when I don't fear anymore. And that's never going to happen. The fear is always going to be there, but it's choosing to decide, well, is that fear real? Is it based on fact? Is it valid? Is it a real problem? And then if you say, well, I haven't done the action yet, I don't even know if I failed yet because I haven't done it yet. Well, then let me try, let me do this. Let me put myself out there and do it. And so it's really about, one, giving ourselves grace, even in that learning process. So if it's something new that you're stepping into that you've not done, we worry about, is someone going to think I'm not qualified or capable? Instead of that, saying, think of it as growing pains. I wrote an article about that on LinkedIn, actually, to say, it's not our incompetence that makes us incapable of doing something new. It's shifting to think about it as a growing pain helps us tremendously, because when you think about a growing pain, right, a growing pain is temporary. It's not forever. It's just something that's uncomfortable during the time in which you learn something new or you grow. So seeing it that way allows you to give yourself the grace to learn the new thing. And if you need to get a coach, a mentor, a support group that helps you as you navigate the new changes or new challenges, that's okay. That's good. But it's growing pain. It's not a permanent indication of your inadequacy because you don't know how to do something. Who remembers how to, learning how to ride a bike or learning how to ride skates, learning how to skate? Who remembers that? Raise your hand if you ever remember that. Who was scared the first time? Was anyone scared? Okay, I remember vividly, my skates were red and yellow. And I remember my cousins were holding my arms as I was trying to learn. And I remember explicitly that they took me over a hump. It was like a hump in the driveway. And I was like, oh my God, it was already hard enough to go over to skate with you all holding my hands on level ground. Now you have the nerve to take me over this hump too. I was upset even as a little kid. But then I remember the process of even falling and failing, but I eventually learned how to skate. And it's the same principle, is that you learned how to ride a bike, you learned how to skate. So when you go through something that you're not comfortable in, say, you know what, I might be scared and this might be new, but I will learn how to do this too, just like I learned how to do everything else. So I think that's really, when you talk about the bugger, you're not going to turn it off, but you can mute it and choose to change your narrative.
Does everyone relate to that? I do. Velera, what's the difference then? And is there a difference? Have you looked at the difference between, you talk about riding a bike, and there's a fear of falling off and getting hurt, and there's a fear of failure. You know, one is real. If you fall off, you might get hurt. The fear of failure, which I think is quite often what that internal chatter is, that bugger, is very different. Very few people ever fail to learn to ride a bike. Have you thought about the differences there?
Oh, absolutely. And I say this in that situation, yes, that's an analogy, right? It's an elementary one, but the same principle applies, is that yes, there are some risks that we're going to take where we're going to fail, and it's going to be more impactful to us than if we were just to fall right off a bike. I always say, though, that in those situations, to detach our worth from the failure or the no that we get when we tried something and we didn't get the response that we expected. It's so important in that time to detach ourselves and our worth from that failure, because otherwise it keeps us stuck from ever taking a chance again, for ever asking again, and we essentially stunt our growth. And so when we think about, well, what's that fear of failure? Sure, it's really thinking about, well, I might fail, but is that a permanent failure? Or is that something where we can say, well, it's not an indication of my worth, but looking at it again, shifting the perspective, that's why it's shifting into undeniable confidence. It's a shift in how you see it. It's saying, it doesn't mean I'm not worth it or just because I failed. What this is, it can be is an opportunity to re-strategize on what I can do different. So what did I learn? What did I learn in the experience? What can I do different? And if the situation was one where you got to know when you asked for something and you thought that you maybe should have and you're disappointed, ask the question of, who can I ask the next time? Is this the right person that I'm asking? So for example, in many cases, we might ask for a promotion, we might ask for a raise, or we might go after a job and be told no. Well, is that the person, is that the only person that you can ask? Because I always say, once you've asked and you get the no, then you can start asking, well, why did I get that no? Either choose to ask the person, well, why is the answer no? What is the issue? What's the challenge? Get the answer, because sometimes we might find that it's an excuse and not a reason. And it's an opportunity for us to find out the difference, right? Who's ever been in a situation where you felt like, I really deserve that promotion. I've been asking and I didn't get the yes, or whatever that case might be. Find out why, ask why. And that will tell you, do I need to go ask around? Meaning, do I need to start looking externally for an opportunity now? Do I need to start looking, developing allies outside of this person I'm asking to get that opportunity or to get that raise? It's really, again, the failure is really an opportunity to re-strategize. And I think the biggest thing is really getting to your yes and not letting someone else's no deter you. My grandmother would always say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Not literally, of course, cat lovers, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to get to your yes. And one person does not hold your yes. There's so many ways for us to get to our yes. So if you get that no, it's time to ask around. Or if you fail, how can you re-strategize and fail fast now to get to where you really want to go? And that doesn't feel good, but it's an opportunity, if you take it as such, to really pause and say, I failed. But it doesn't mean I'm not worth that thing. I just got to figure out a different way to get to my yes. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. It's very quiet. All right.
Brilliant. So that's great advice. But sometimes it's not about failing. It's about starting. It's about jumping on that bike for the first time. It's about putting the skates on. It's about finding that time to ask the boss for the raise. How do we get the courage to go and do that and ask for what we want?
Great. You know, it's so important for us to anchor in our why. We all have our whys, and anchoring in that is critical to taking courage. It's funny because we're in international, we're Women's History Month, right? If you can think about every woman that we're honoring, they faced undoubtedly opportunities to stay stuck in their fear. But courage doesn't mean that there's an absence of fear. It means that you choose to take an action despite the fear. And undoubtedly, the reason why they chose to find courage to ask anyway is because they had a strong why. They believed in something. They believed in themselves and something they really wanted change for. And so it doesn't have to be in our personal lives something that deserves or warrants Women's History Month celebration. But what's your why? Is it that you want to live a better life? That you like to be able to provide more for your children or your family or your community? Or that you know that you've worked really hard and so you want to be recognized for the work that you do? When you think about all the years you might have spent studying, all the hard challenges that you've overcome to get to where you are, what's your why? And if you choose not to take an action, what's the cost of not doing so? When you think about, I can't ask for that raise, is it that the cost going to be that you're going to make less money, but you're still going to be doing the same work as the person sitting next to you? Or is it when you say, you're afraid to go ask for that promotion, is it that you won't get the promotion that you've worked hard for, that you worked your butt off for? All those things start to come to mind, and you got to decide, you know what? I've worked for this. I deserve this. I need this. And I'm going to go after it. There's got to be a strong why. There's got to be a strong reason. And then the second part is just very literal, is because closed mouths, they don't get fed. That's something my brother would always say, is that no one knows what you really want unless you ask for it. And women, I'll be the first to tell you, I've been guilty of that, even being married. I expect my husband to know what I want before I ask for it. Who's done that before? Who's done that? Well, he should already know. I shouldn't have to tell him what I want. We say this all the time, right? You're laughing, Mark. You know that to be true.
I know it. Yep.
But that's so unfair and that's unrealistic. Unless you married, and I married a mind reader, no one knows what you want or need unless you ask for it. And so this is very simple. And this is an analogy that I will give you that one frustrated me when I thought about it. The reason to ask and the reason to find the courage to ask, because when you decide not to ask and you get up from the table and say, well, I'm not going to ask because I'm afraid. Guess what? Someone else is coming right in your chair and sitting down and asking for what you wanted and what you deserve. And they're getting it just because they asked, not because they're more qualified, not because they have more tenure, not because they're more skilled. It happens all the time. They're getting what you could have gotten if you would have asked. And so if that scenario does not sit well with you, and they didn't sit well with me, go ask for what you really want. And again, if you get the no, remember the question is, great, you gave me the no, but that doesn't have to be the final answer. Let me go find the yes. That means I need to go ask someone else and develop relationships internally. Fine. If I need to now start looking externally, and I'm speaking about career in particular, because oftentimes that's where we really find we can get a no for whatever reasons, politics, manager, direct report relationship, whatever that is. But one person cannot give you a final no. That's their answer. That is not the answer though. So go find your yes.
I speak to a lot of members of the community who talk to me about being passed over for promotion, and essentially what was going on behind the scenes was their male colleague was up there asking for it and not doing a very good job, whilst our member was sitting there doing a great job, wanting for somebody to come along and tap her on the shoulder and say, well done, you've been promoted. That's what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You summed it up. Someone's asking, and it's not always men, let's be fair. It's not always another man, a man. Oftentimes it is, because we are more conditioned, culturally as women, to be less aggressive and ask for things. Whereas men, oftentimes you all are taught to be very go get it, very much competitive. And so we're taught to be more communal. Think about the other person first. That doesn't always work well when we have to really stand up for what we want personally. And so, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Has anybody got any examples of when they've not stood up for what they wanted or asked for what they wanted and not got it? Or alternatively, how have you got the courage to go and get what you want? What are the
Were you asking me that question?
Margaret, come on, you go. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. I'm not sure if that's actually exactly what you asked, but I've noticed that I have a lot of courage to fight for my team. I would go above and beyond to ask for money for them, for promotion, for a bonus, for anything they may want or need or I think they deserve. But it's totally different story when I'm trying to do it for myself. And I have no idea why that is, because I talk to exactly the same people for my team as I would talk to regarding my K, but with myself I struggle so much. And yes, I've got no many times. I did try, and I tried to figure out the why, but I always get what I want for the team, but I can't get what I want for myself, and I really don't get that, and I don't know how to overcome this. I don't know if there's any practical tips I could follow.
Margaret, question for you. Does it feel selfish or greedy when you ask for yourself?
It does. It does. It does feel selfish.
Yeah, that's the big one for a lot of us as women, right? We tend to want to make sure everyone else is taken care of. Right? I don't have any kids, but that instinct is always, let's make sure everyone else is okay. We're the mama bears, right? We got to make sure everyone else is taken care of. But when it comes to us, it's almost like taking our clothes off, almost, not to be graphic, but it's like, oh my God, I can't really ask for me though. That sounds too greedy or selfish or wanting too much. And the way that I would say this to you is, and I write this in the book too, and I say, take a trip down memory lane. And I say this when you start to feel like you're greedy or it's too much. Take a trip down memory lane and think about all the things that you've done to get to where you are. Think about all the results that you've delivered for your company, put it on paper, think about it, and then put a value to that and say, you know what, I've spent hours on education. I spent hours working here. I spent hours to learn this craft or skill. I spent hours managing this team. I spent hours delivering these results. This is why I'm asking. And here's how I also put it in when I negotiate salaries. As opposed to saying, I deserve this, I like to say, based on my skills and qualifications and experience, this is what the market really says that I'm worth. And so it doesn't feel so naked. It feels very, very much factual. It feels very clinical, sterile almost, but it almost takes it off of me and it puts it on, this is what the market is saying. And because of these results, this is what I'm worth. And it's a nice way to shift the language. So you maybe want to try that and say, based on the results that I've been able to deliver this year with the team and all the work that we've done, it really makes sense that I would be here. As opposed to say, I deserve or I, it's like, based on this, right? ABC 1, 2, 3, this is the outcome that I really believe makes sense for me. And see how that feels. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I'm just making notes now.
No, that's fine. Yep. Put the qualifiers in there based on this, this, and this. It's almost like a kid, right? Even I was a kid, I remember I'd say, Mom, based on this, this, and this is why I should go. This is why I should be able to eat this candy tonight. I ate all my vegetables, I ate all this. It's like, these are all the reasons why, and I can now put in my offer or my request.
Sarah, I see you nodding. Is this an experience you've had? Sarah? You've not come off of mute for some reason. Okay, don't worry. We'll return, Sarah. We will return. I promise.
We can post it in the chat box, Sarah, and Mark can read it out for you.
Okay. Good. So quite often as well, then, Velera, I hear our members talk about they've asked, but perhaps they haven't been heard and they're not getting the response. Quite often in meetings, in group sessions. What are your tips there?
Sure. So if they're asking for things or they're sharing things in meetings, is that the question and they haven't been heard or there's no response?
Yeah.
Is that...
Yeah.
Sure. So a couple of things. If it's specific to a meeting, I think it's important to, language is very important. So for example, oftentimes we'll say, can I, as opposed to I need to say this. It's almost like asking for permission in the meeting. And as opposed to when you realize and see how other people, particularly men, no offense, Mark, that there's not a request to engage or a request to add value. It's the recognition that, hey, I'm in this meeting to add value. And so I'm being the responsible person in this meeting to add that value. So I start by saying language, recognizing that if you're invited to the meeting, it's your opportunity to provide value. So there's no need to ask for permission to say something, just say it. Hey, I believe this, this, and this. Or if you're saying if no one's hearing you, then sometimes it might be, well, am I really saying, am I really talking, or am I just kind of timid and interjecting? Get in there and say, I have something to add. Let me say this, great point, let me finish my statement. Or, I really think this. Or if you're in the meeting, I tell people that I've coached this all the time, if they say, well, I really don't know what the meeting's about, I don't really feel like I can add value. Sometimes what you can do is you can rephrase what someone has said and say, you know what, that's a really interesting point. I didn't really realize that. Or you can ask questions of the people in the meeting to get more informed so that by the time you leave the meeting, you are well informed. And people love to share what they know in meetings, right? So ask a question of, hey, well, what are your thoughts on this? How do you handle this? And what are we hearing? So there's a couple ways to engage in a meeting specifically to really add value, but you want to either ask questions of people that are in the meeting that have insight so you can take away some knowledge, or you can rephrase it and make sure you heard what they said correctly. But if people are just ignoring you in the meetings, I think that could be an opportunity for you to have a conversation with people, sidebars after, say, hey, I'm asking these questions or I'm talking in meetings and no one's really responding. What's really going on? Ask why. What is this? If there might be one person that you work with, like, did you notice that? So that you don't start feeling like you're imagining things, right? You want to get that feedback. But in general, outside of meetings, and if you're asking for things, again, a promotion or whatever that might be, and you're not being heard, again, I say go back to one, do not internalize it and make it about I'm not qualified. It's an opportunity to really ask the why, ask it if it's a manager or whomever who's responsible for giving you that opportunity for a promotion or a raise. Well, why? So that you can really understand, is this a reason or an excuse? Because there is definitely a difference. A reason is a legitimate one where we really don't have the budget. We really don't have something. An excuse is, well, let's talk about it. Well, we haven't, and there's really no rationale behind it, or there's really no truth behind it. And so there's an opportunity for you to decide based on the answer. And, I'll give you a great example. Mark, in this situation I was in, where I was told by a senior leader that I was the strongest person on the team, and that they wanted to talk to me at the end of the year, which was a few months from then, about really opportunities for advancement. I said, great, let's talk. Fast forward, I emailed, hey, let's have a meeting. They were out of town at the time. So when they got back, we did. When I said in the meeting, I'd already had my 2-pager, Margaret, of here's why I'm qualified. So it didn't just become about Velera deserve or Velera. It was, hey, I brought these results. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And here's why I think I'm definitely ready. They completely waffled on the conversation. And they went from you're the strongest person on the team to, oh, this person has been emailing me that and saying that they're interested in the promotion too. And so maybe we should just take another 6 months and kind of see, who's a better fit. I said, oh, okay, really? Well, let me tell you that really I'm looking to be promoted in 6 months because I've been here for some time and I've been doing the work. I left that meeting and I started to go find my yes. And that yes meant going to look externally because I was like, this is a load of crap, honestly. This is, you're waffling, you're changing your direction, your tune. I don't trust that. Because at that point, it wasn't a reason, it was an excuse to me. So it was a very important conversation for me to hear and get the feedback and know this doesn't make sense to me. 4 months later, I got a promotion making probably $30,000 more than what I was making in the current role. And let me tell you what he said when I called to tell him that I was resigning. He said, I knew at that meeting that I'd lost you. Let me help. So imagine if I would have waited on his timing, on his direction, who knows if I would have gotten that promotion and or if I would have gotten the raise that I got by moving on. So I say all that to say is that when you're asking and you're not being heard, you have a responsibility to find out, is it really a reason or is it an excuse? And if you really in your gut feel that's an excuse, go start finding your yes. And that might mean that you have to start looking externally, but it's okay. You owe yourself the yes for all the hard work that you've done.
Thank you. So let's talk about leadership then. How as a woman do you own your strengths and your unique strengths as a woman, as a leader? And how do you stop if there's those strengths becoming masculine strengths?
Yeah, I think it's so funny when we feel like we have to become masculine in order to have strength. I'm like, well, if that was the case, there'd only be a need for men in the world because, women wouldn't need to exist. So clearly there's a strength that you can have and own in your femininity. And so often that's been associated with being docile or being submissive, and that's not the case at all. It's meaning owning the innate qualities that we have as women. And that same thing, Margaret, that makes us so great at protecting and advocating for others is what makes us great leaders. There was actually reading some research on, I think it might've been a diversity study that it might've been Wells Fargo, interesting enough, that had done it on, or no, it was actually PwC. Pricewaterhouse. They did a survey and looked at how engaged people were that reported to women. And they showed that when people that are reported to women on average are more engaged in the organization. And I believe that's because as women, we are always trying to find ways to build consensus, build a sense of team, make sure that everyone feels valued, needed. Obviously, there's variances in personality, but I'm saying in general, we're very much intentional about building a team and building people up to make sure that everyone's performing. And we're also greater around building vision around something. So if you think about those Girl Scout cookies and all the different things like that, they're out there selling them. They're building a tribe to sell those cookies about there's something bigger than them. So, if you think about all the things that we do well to build other people and build people around a vision or an idea, that is what leadership is. And so there is no need for us to adopt masculine traits in order to lead effectively. We can be exactly who we are and lead well, because I think we forget sometimes in the talk about bottom line revenue and profitability that a business is only a collection of people. And if those people don't feel valued, if they don't feel like they're recognized for their contributions, if they don't feel heard, they're not going to be performing their best. So if we're leading teams and we help people feel valued, seen, heard, they're going to perform their best and our teams are going to do well. So I think that's just something that we can look at and think about as women, that we can own exactly who we are and lead extremely well with great results.
Velera, thank you. Is there anything else you want to cover? Should we open it up to just questions? I can also, I'm planning, because we've got a few minutes left, if people want to go into breakout rooms and just meet some other people and chat, we can do that.
Whatever you all would like to do. I'm here to answer questions if someone has a question.
Brilliant. Then can I have a call for questions?
Mark?
Yeah.
I just wanted to pick up on something Velera said recently. And Velera, nice to meet you, because we've chatted on LinkedIn, because Velera spoke at an event that one of my colleagues hosted in the US just after your book came out.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember I bought the book.
Well, thank you.
I haven't finished reading it, but I have, for the portion I did read was very good. I just wanted to echo that from my personal experience. It is very tempting when you're young to try and imitate the male leaders and think that, but then, you know, then the woman becomes as like aggressive. Then it's like, where is that balance? But I've actually found, as I've grown older, more experienced, that actually, if you're just yourself and actually you have much more result, you can be a very effective leader by actually remaining true to yourself and being an enabler to your team members, as opposed to driving them to conclusion. Help enable them to draw them along and work towards that common good, and you end up with a better solution. And I think then that way you don't feel like you're occupying a space you shouldn't be. You don't, that inner critic about judging yourself, because you're very clear about what you want to achieve individually and as a team.
Agreed, definitely agree. Just being you and enable people that report to you, that work with you. Removing, I think as a leader, is their purpose is to remove the obstacles for their team performing their best. That's really what it is.
Thank you for that question and comment. Does anybody else want to speak up, speak out, ask question? It doesn't look like it. Then what I suggest we do is to first of all say, Velera, thank you very much. You need to put your book up, which I see behind you, so people can see the cover. If every Yvonne, how many chapters have you got through? And it's a good book. You recommend it to everybody.
I managed to go through more than halfway, but I mean, it was a few months ago, so don't test me.
Okay.
I've read many books since then also.
All right, brilliant. Then listen, there's a link on the website, on our website, on this event, where you can go and find the book and go and buy it, and I'd encourage you to do so. Velera, thank you so much for that. It was brilliant, insightful, thought-provoking, and look forward to perhaps having a follow-up on this at some stage. You were brilliant.